Today, let's build the RoBox Type 3 3D printed robot. I'll put all the files up on Ting-I-verse so you can build this. And you can see, it walks along. Moving arms, moving meter, moving head. It's based on, if you'll remember, about 2 weeks ago, I put in a Type 1, a Type 2, and a Type 3 clawfoot walking. It's using the Type 3 system. Basically, this system is an elevated wheel walking system. The cam here is half a wheel, and the cam on this side is half a wheel. So together they form a full wheel, and one or the other is always on this little platform rolling across it. So even though you have feet, it's really a wheel. And that's why it can, it's so efficient. You can have a very heavy body and it won't make any difference because it's just rolling a wheel, but elevated on legs. This this gray part, silver part, however it turns up on your screen, is a part that I just added and glued on so that if you wanted to put a body onto this, that gives you a flat surface to screw to. This same type of wedge you could design for any of the other units, the Type 2, the wedge would glue on, or the Type 1. So when I decided I was going to do a robot with a body and everything based on the Type 3, I just went ahead and pretty much started from scratch because I wanted to add some cool features. For example, this being the heart of the whole thing, because this is where your motor, your gears, your switch, your battery box, and the moving meter all mount on this. This prints is one piece, flat on the printer like this, no supports. I printed all of the parts you're going to see at 0.2 with the exception of the gears. I go ahead and I print the gears at 0.15 just to make sure that they're nice and sharp and clean. So to save time this time, because last time when I did the Big Max build, I did everything, you know, the gluing, the soldering, everything live, and it was kind of a long video. So this time I've gone ahead and pre-prepped the soldering part, because there's just really no point showing that either you know how to solder or you don't. You don't need to watch me try to do it. So one of the first things you're going to do is, again, I'm using these very cheap dual axle motors that you can buy just about anywhere. I got this particular one off AliExpress for 89 cents. And of course I ordered like 10 of them. And I think when I did those, because the motor on them has a black end and this has a white end, I think those were from GearBest. And I paid $1 or something, but it was very cheap. But anyway, this motor is going to slide down into this cradle. And in order for it to fit in there, we need to take this plastic strap off and these little tabs, and that strap and tabs are there to hold the motor in place, but we won't need those because the frame has built into it, whether it shows up in the camera or not, has built into it a stop that once the motor's in place, that will hold the motor in, and we need those out of the way so that we can slide it all into place. So here would be a motor that I've already prepped with an on-off switch, and you know, there's no big science to it. Your battery box, this is a AAA battery box, 2 AAA batteries. This particular box I had bought from Polo Lou's website because it has a center mount hole, and basically probably any AAA battery box with center mount hole will probably work, would be my guess. But you have 2 wires that come from a battery box, and you have 2 connection points on any little DC motor, and if you connect the 2 together, the motor is going to run. If your robot walks backwards, then you simply flip those 2 wires around. If you want to be able to turn it off and on, then you simply interrupt one of the wires with a switch. You guys can figure all that out, right? Right. So I'm going to take this good stuff and this frame, and in my case, since I've already got the switch and everything on there, just going to feed it down. I think I'm hung up on some wires. Yeah, got a black wire on the wrong side of the system here. And forgive me, I can't watch the camera screen and what I'm doing at the same time. But that just fits in like that. And this battery box has a screw hole made in the frame and a hole in the battery. So let's screw that in. I'm just taking a, wish the screwdriver would be better. It's just a number 2 self-tapping screw, but nothing critical about this. You just, any screw you've got that'll fit in the hole, use. Kind of true with all the screws on here. You may not have the same types that I'm using, but it doesn't really matter. The little switch that I used, this again is just off eBay, the slide switch. It's about 19 millimeters from mounting hole to mounting hole, if that helps you identify a similar switch. Normally when you buy these switches, they don't come with these little itty bitty 2 millimeter machine thread screws, so you kind of have to get those separately. Again, this stuff is all cheap and you can get it all on eBay, and it doesn't, you know, it takes a couple of days to get stuff off eBay typically, unless the vendor's in China, then it's going to take longer. Let's trying to get the screw in without dropping it, but I couldn't. I dropped it. I'll try it again. Again, if I'm not in frame, I'm sorry. I can't look up while I'm doing this. Okay. And alright, that should have only taken about half as long as it took. So now you can see that the motor is going to slide all the way down. The end of it will sit on a little bracket there and protect it. Normally at this point I would put a little dab of glue on the back side of that motor. Let me grab some. Just on this, like so. Just put some on the back of the motor, so when I slide it down in there, it'll eventually be glued and stuck in place. And at this point, the person could check to make sure that the wiring and the motor are all working right. Yep, good so far. Then I like to take the 2 small motor gears and put them on. They have a flat side and they can only go on one way. You don't really need to even screw them on because they kind of snap into place. But having said that, if it's something that you do want to secure with screws, I'm going to try some. Let me try these screws. These are different. Let's see how they work. If you do put a couple of screws in there, I mean, what could it hurt? We'll just make sure that the gear doesn't wander off on its own. Okay. All right, we're now moving right along. The larger gears, all 4 of them are the same now, and the screw that I'm using is a 3mm by 12mm. And here in America, if you didn't happen to have a 3x12 laying around, I'm sure you could find another screw that's close enough, or drill this out a little bit to use a 440 screw, something very common, something we all can buy just about anywhere. Built into the frame, I put a recess where these are going to go, so you don't need a washer. If you were familiar with the builds from the Type 1, 2, and 3, I had washers behind the wheels just to hold the gear away from grinding on the frame. But now you don't need to even do that. I just built it into the design to make things easier. So, this screwdriver fits these better. I always just screw them all the way in and then back them out some till it's loose. You can always turn it on to see if it's loose. And just remember, whichever way we put them on this side, you're going to put them on the opposite way on the other side. But let's finish up on this side for right now. We'll check everything when we're done to make sure it's not binding and turning free and all that good stuff. And just a little bit too. And if you do get these out of sync, you can always obviously pull the screws and realign them. Okay. Looks like we got all four going. What I'm going to put on next is part of the meter movement mechanism. This lever, this Batman-like looking lever, is going to, again, I'm just using a number 2 self-tapping little screw, but again, whatever you got laying around. You take this, and I'm going to fish it down till the long part sticks out through that. I'm fishing this down from the inside. I don't know quite how to hold it so you can see what I got going on here, but, and there's a hole in the print for the screw. And again, I find the easiest thing to do is to tighten them down and then loosen them back up. You want this piece to be able to move freely. See how it sticks out the front? This little tail piece. Basically what's going to happen is the legs, which fit on these pins, will push this back and forth. And this back and forth movement on the front is going to move this pointer, which has a notch in it. So let's get a screw in the pointer. You want this nice and loose. But now, when you move that lever, it will move the meter. I went ahead and painted these little divots on the meter with a little bit of silver to make them stand out more. You can see it shouldn't have any drag at all. It should move completely free, or should even be able to do it this way for that matter. Okay. let's put on a leg. Why not? So the legs have been optimized a little bit from the Type 3 build over there. I shortened this in, lengthened this out, shortened the platform that the cam rides on, and then added a extension on the very top, which is going to be used for the head turning. So basically you're going to fish your part up through the slots and capture it on the two posts. And I'm only going to put a screw and a washer in the top. We don't need anything in the bottom. So I have a small number 4 washer, and again a number 2 screw, self-tapping screw. Feeding that in there. I'm going to tighten it down all the way, but I can see the leg doesn't move, so I'm going to loosen it up. You want to make sure it's not binding, that it can freely move. And just get the leg on the other side. Sometimes it's easier if they're in a different position, so you might run your motor vertically. It gives you the most amount of room. See, it's a lot easier to drop the leg on that way. Make sure you're not binding against the meter moving piece. I was, now I'm not. And grab one more number 2 screw and a number 4 washer. I'm never going to see that, so I better go in the other room and find another screw. You better just bring the box of screws in here. Number 4 washer. Hopefully I won't drop this one on the floor. You know, stuff just vanishes once it hits the floor. You can hear it. You might even see the first bounce, but after that, it just kind of disappears. Okay. Tighten it down all the way, loosen it up a little till everything's loose. So at this point the legs should operate and the meter should move. Something got tight on this side, so let's try loosening up a screw here. Oh, I see what. I shouldn't have run it quite yet, and here's why. We haven't added a stop in here yet, and so the little platform that normally rides on that cam is actually dropped through the hole in the body. There's no binding, and there is a part we need to put in. We might as well do it right now. These little wedges, and they have lips and recesses. I'm going to put a dab of glue on both ends, and I'm going to fish this part up underneath onto this base piece on both sides, and that'll keep that from dropping down and never jamming like it just did on me. So again, I just put just a smidge. There isn't any force or pressure being applied to this part. In fact, it could probably just sit there even without glue and be fine. Might be easier to put them in holding it upside down. Okay. There's one. And I'm caught up in the wiring. There's two. The trying to get you enough light. Being black parts, it's hard to see them. The part just fits, and basically what it's going to do is fill in the gap area. That way, that part of the foot can't drop down through and jam up on anything. And this particular motor is walking backwards. In the end, I'll have to turn those wires around, but we won't stop and do that right now. What would we like to do next? I guess prep the arms. The arms I printed in some red, and I already have a screw stuck through them. And they're going to screw through the body and then to these arm levers. And the lever has a little tab that rides against the leg, so when the leg's moving there, it'll make the arms rock. This part, in fact, there's only three parts. There's two arm levers like this and the head lever. There's only three parts that have to be printed with supports because of the way they're designed. All the other parts print without supports. So, hold one of the levers inside the body and the arm next to it. Screwdriver doesn't really fit that screw very well. And worse than that, I didn't get it in the hole. There. So I think with the lever pushed all the way back, the elbow should just kind of be sticking out the side, and this should move freely when you move the lever around inside. Then the arm should move. Do the same thing on the other side. About the same, both arms moving freely. That's good. So now we need to prep the head, and the head prints has two parts, left and right. They both print flat on the bed, as again, no supports needed. I've gone ahead and hand painted around the eye and the grill. You see the two parts are going to go together like that. And the eyes I designed as a separate part. I printed mine in translucent red, and there is a hole on the inside of them in case you want to put LEDs in there. It's a 5mm hole, so you can use a 5mm LED. I'm going to go ahead and prep. I've already prepped the two LEDs and a current limiting resistor and a wire. This is all covered if you watched the build on Big Macs. I've already prepped a couple of those, and I'm going to jam them into the design. I think I want to glue the eyes in and then the LEDs into the eyes. I'm not sure. But anyway, what I'm going to attempt to do now is put a couple of, maybe just 2 drops of glue in there, and then I'll hit it with the speed set. I know it isn't on camera. Bear with me, you'll see. You'll see in a second. Just drop the eye down in there, and kind of moving the glue around at the end of that wire. And I'm just gonna hose it. I don't know. Might be that I need to get a flashlight so you guys can see better what's going on. But now we have one eye installed. Let's do the other. Trying not to make a big glue mess here too. You know how that goes. Okay. I'm guessing I'm just going to go ahead and put some super glue on the LED and shove it in there and then spritz it. Like so. And I think I'm going to also glue the wire so if it ever gets pulled, I don't have to worry about it yanking loose from the eye or the eye out or anything like that. Waiting for that to set up. Then this one we'll glue to the other side, which I'm probably going to have to do down here on the tabletop because I don't have enough hands otherwise. Now that I got this many parts. There we go. And we're just going to glue the two halves together. And it doesn't need much. Obviously it's not load bearing. It's a cosmetic part. So I'll put a couple of drops probably near the neck because there's a fat area there. Near the nose would hide it easily. And just a few drops hither and yon. And maybe I'll use the tabletop to center everything up. How's that? Let's put the head of the robot down on the table, and then it's pretty easy to line up the neck. Give it a spritz here and there. I think the head's looking pretty good. And I can also check and see if I've buggered up the wiring at all. There we go. Just went across the batteries with it. Alright, so now let's put the head on. And in order to hold it on, again we need two screws. And I think since I'm not going to be wiring the eyes up right now, I'm just going to stuff the wire inside the head. I can fish it out later. And this is probably going to be a really hard part for me to try to catch on camera. But the long and the short of it is on the bottom of the head there are two holes, and on this bracket it's going to screw right on. So the body would go in between the two, and when the bracket moves that would make the head move. And I just don't know any easy way of trying to get the camera down inside here while I'm trying to do this. I'm not even sure, because I think that these screws aren't magnetic. Could be kind of a problem. I might have to go get some magnetic ones so I can have them stay where the part is. But let's just see how it goes. Okay. Good news is I've got one screw started, so the second one shouldn't be too hard. I should be able to rotate this. If that heads forward, this should be to the side. So that should be close. Let's just see if I can get this other one in there. I might have to get some needle nose to fish this one into place. Oh, I think I got it. All right. So, there's a lever in there. You can see how that connects to the bottom of the head. 2 screws on top of the head. These slots are going to help us line everything up when we assemble it. We're just going to line that extended part on the top of the leg that I pointed out earlier into that, and then they're basically done. And when you assemble these parts, you need to make sure that the arms are pushed all the way forward. And I don't know if it'll show up, but there is, right here, there's an internal lip. You see that? It's about 2 mils inside the body. The idea is that the top of this meter rack would slide into that, and that, you know, would add support. So if anyone's pushing on that part, you're just going to have to hang with me here a minute. Okay. I missed the slot in the front. There we go. Got the slot in the front. The slot in the back. I think what I need to do now is to stick some screws in. There's 4 places on the base and the bottom for the screws to hold the bottom in. So you have the arms all the way forward, so they should be in the right place. They shouldn't be jammed against the legs or anything. I centered that piece on the bottom of the head with that pin on the leg when I slid it together. I'll put just 2 screws in for right now. I don't think there's going to be enough light for you guys to see, but in there. So, and we have it. We have head turning, meter moving, walking. Like I say, it should be walking backwards because I need to reverse those. Need to reverse the 2 motor wires. Although I think with modern AAAs, it's hard to tell positive from negative. I think I can probably just flip the battery around because they've got tabs on both sides these days. I think it'll work. Let's see. Let's see what happens. There we go. So, there it is. You guys can build it. I'm going to put the files up on Ting-I-verse. It's an easy build, didn't cost much. Probably could use just about any old screws you have laying around. Any old LEDs or light bulbs you have laying around. Any scraps of PLA you can do in multicolors. Say I did the body in a vertigo gray, the red arms, black feet. Did the meter in black, you could do anything you wanted. Did the head in the same vertigo gray. Enjoy.